Final Fantasy XIV just finished up their cloud data center test, and if you're not excited, you should be. Square hosted a week-long stress test with the cloud technology that they've been working on for years. I spent a lot of the week playing on it, and well, there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about, like the server performance, queue times, and the experience of having everyone from around the globe in one data center. Stay tuned until the end because I'll go into what this could mean for the future in Dawntrail. Now I'm sure that a lot of people are curious about what it even means to be on the cloud in the first place, and honestly, while we don't have a perfect answer for that, I can offer some insight based on my experience working with cloud servers in the past, as well as the little that Square has told us. The cloud data center test was pitched as a login cap stress test. In other words, they wanted to see how the queues would perform as well as how many players could be logged in at once. The cool part was, they made it really enticing to try out. Everybody who made characters in the cloud data center were given level 80 job and story skips, so you could basically try out any job that you wanted and do content up until the end of Shadowbringers. Cloud players also received 50 million gil and the ability to instantly buy any home that they wanted once they had their grand company ranked up. No lottery required. This set the stage for a lot of unique experiences. As far as the performance itself, it's kind of hard to tell how well things worked. I can at the very least say that the queue time seemed much faster than before. Normally, when I'm in queue, I usually get in when my queue counter is around the 20s or 30s. On the cloud, I actually got in when it was around 100, so it seems like the login speeds will be a lot faster than before. Did you know that they even increased the queue speed shortly after the first day? They were really long at the start. Make sure to remember that since it's important for something that I'll talk about at the end of the video. I have no doubts that this is one of the most important parts of the test. Why? If you played during Endwalker launch, you might remember what it was like to wait for hours to log in. We can only imagine how many players quit the game because of how bad the queues were, especially for new players trying to jump in on the hype train at the time. Faster queues means more people stay around to play, which means more subs. It's pretty simple to see the benefits here. In the same vein, having more people being able to stay logged in is also critical here. I don't know what the cap is, but it's probably a safe assumption to say that the worlds in the cloud can hold more players in line at the same time. Could you imagine if certain worlds that always seem congested were to open up? And then there's the talk of the ping, which is a little trickier because at least in North America, Final Fantasy XIV doesn't always have the most stable connection. Especially within the last month, I've seen many moments where players had connection issues where they had to use a VPN to play. This is really bad, and it mostly has to do with how the game servers are hosted. Haven't you ever noticed when the game felt laggy, or you even got disconnected while the rest of your internet using applications were having zero issues? A swap to the cloud could fix some of these things. One very important detail is that the cloud data centers were hosted on the East Coast instead of the West Coast of North America. This was a pretty big deal with a lot of players feeling like the game was much more playable and responsive. If you play on the West Coast, you didn't gain anything, but for players closer to the East Coast as well as a lot in South America and even Europe, a lot of people had a great time with the data center being much closer to them. If you don't know how much ping affects you now, it's basically the delay between what happens and how you experience it. Most people learn timings for things like cast bars and AoEs in a way where they dodge in time. The worse your ping, the earlier you have to dodge. Less ping means you have more time to react to things. Even if it sounds like it's not a lot since we're talking in milliseconds here, it can make a big difference in how the game feels, especially for faster jobs like the Monk and Machinist, as well as anybody playing PvP. We don't know if the final release of the cloud servers would also be on the East Coast, and while I certainly wouldn't complain since I personally benefit from it, it would be an interesting experience because a lot of West Coast players would be losing out a bit there. And that brings us to the topic of what the cloud servers would even look like when they release. I think that a lot of people have an unlikely expectation that these would be new data centers. It's much more likely that the existing data centers would be ported to the cloud instead. In a perfect world, the change is seamless other than maybe a longer period of downtime than we're used to, at least when the swap first happens. As far as my experience on the test server itself, it was pretty great. I had fun being able to try every job easily at 80 since I only have 5 jobs leveled to 90 really. I only have a few others that are closer to 30 just so I could use them in PvP. The job skips also meant that a lot of people were trying out alternative roles that they're not used to normally. There were also a ton of player events that I got to witness and experience. There were many attempts at various world firsts, from ultimate clears to things like the Baldesian Arsenal and Delubrum Savage. The Boja and Eureka events were notable for recreating something akin to the launch experience in these zones, especially when people were starting fresh. That means that no one had a stockpile of the best duty actions and buffs that you can collect in Boja, as well as everyone in Eureka actually being at the same elemental level. Tons of people also ended up grinding hard to unlock home purchasing, since homes in the cloud test servers were first come first serve instead of a lottery. Even if it was only for a week, a lot of people wanted to experience their dream home. This also meant that we actually had designer homes, studios, and venues in the cloud. It was really cool seeing what people were able to come up with, especially with people not having crafters level to make furnishing items. The PvP community organized Q-Sync events where players from around the world came together to queue up for Frontlines and Rival Wings. Now I'll say that these are really fun, but I've also never been hit by that many Dragon Limit breaks in a row. I'm guessing that people tried to play some of the meta jobs since they had access to the job skips. In any case, it was cool to see people from all regions playing. The Final Fantasy XIV subreddit also organized a few different events, like the End of an Era party, which attempted to recreate a mount wall just like players did at the end of 1.0. It was pretty wild. I also checked out the Gilded Mikoshi Mount Tower in Mordona, which I'll just let you see for yourself because it was pretty intense. I honestly really love seeing stuff like this. The community coming together is my favorite part of any MMO or multiplayer game in general. And speaking of community events, I wanted to mention the upcoming Wish Upon a Realm event. It's a 3-day celebration with different events, contests, and prizes, all in efforts to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation ran by a bunch of Final Fantasy XIV content creators. The Final Fantasy XIV community came together to raise $15,000 last year, and or should I say we're shooting for $20,000 this year. I've been invited to help out with the event, and you'll be able to see me in the Creator PvP Rumble hosted by Brian Ricardo. I hope to see you taking part. Now back to the cloud. Where does all this lead us? Remember where I mentioned at the start of the video how they were able to literally speed up the logging queue in real time? That's the beauty of cloud architecture. Modern cloud servers are especially known for being easily scalable. This is great for a game with fluctuating popularity like an MMO. When Dawn Trail comes out, if we're on the cloud by then, they can easily scale up the servers to meet the demands of everyone trying to log in at launch. And then, once things have calmed down a bit, they can simply scale it back. Without the cloud, companies like Square would have to buy more servers to handle the players, which kinda sucks the moment you don't need all that extra hardware because it's just wasting money sitting there doing nothing. That's why the cloud is so convenient. Imagine not having to have AFK kick timers either. Now certainly the game will still be held back by the limitations of the engine itself, but it's safe to say that there's a ton more room for improvement with the servers. Let's imagine for a bit how this could impact other things. Being able to spin up servers more easily means that they'll have an easier time testing new features. Imagine a region-wide PvP hub where you'd be able to match up with players on different data centers. All of the PvP queues could be improved with a larger pool of players to match up with. It would be the best thing for Rival Wings outside of having it added as a daily roulette, which we really need by the way. We could even get new housing wards that don't take months or even years to be added because they don't have to purchase new server hardware just to run them. And considering they were specifically testing zone capacity as well, we may see fewer or even no instances in zones in the future, which might be a little messy for people trying to select an NPC or join in on a hunt train. Even if it is, I do love seeing more people in zones. And as far as the topic of ping is concerned, while that wouldn't be an intent of the cloud data center specifically, I think that Square definitely will have noticed all the feedback, especially from South American players, talking about how much better the game felt for them. I'm hoping that Square adds a server for players in that region to enjoy the game with better ping like the rest of us. There's a lot of potential here to improve the game, and from the sounds of it, the cloud test was a huge success. I can't wait to see the follow-up report from Square, and I'm hoping that we see the cloud implemented before Dawn Trail. I'm also hoping that if you like this video, you'd consider subscribing to check out more of my vids, and soon, a really cool project that I'm working on, so stay tuned and I'll see you in the next video.